that means. Okay. All right, ready to go.
Excellent. So welcome one and all. This is the Salary Commission meeting. We are meeting Wednesday, October 20th, 2021, and it's approximately 6 p.m. I am Michelle Hampton, sitting currently as the chair of the Salary Commission. I would like to ask that Ms. Weaver, our deputy city clerk, Ms. Warrington, our representative from the city, please do our roll call.
All right, so Dixie Bain.
Present.
Michelle Hampton.
Present.
Katie Horde.
Present.
Ford Poston.
Present.
And can I get a motion to excuse Carolyn Bennett?
I still motion to excuse Carolyn Bennett.
And I'll second. All right, seeing as though we have a motion and a second, any discussion?
I need to make a note on the record that a notice was issued for this meeting tonight, and it stated that we were holding a public hearing and in order to receive comments on the mayor's salary. So tonight is in fact only a discussion on the salaries of the elected officials and not a public hearing. There will be a public hearing set in the future to receive that public comment and will be advertised in the city's website. We want to apologize for this error in noticing. If there's anyone here tonight that came to speak regarding the mayor's salary, please feel free to send me an email with your comments and we'll make sure to include them in the record. So my email address for the record is cweaver, WEAVER, at lakestevenswa.gov. And it can also be found on the city's website under the city clerk page.
Okay, great. We had a motion on the floor to excuse Carolyn Bennett's absence. The motion was seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Okay, motion passes. Wonderful. All right, so we've got a couple of action items. And first is the oath of office for our newest member, and that would be Katie Horde. Ms. Weaver, I understand you're going to handle this portion?
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, Katie, are you ready?
I sure am.
Okay,
Oh, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and lead and then I'll have you respond. Is that correct? Okay,
Great.
so I state your name,
I, Katie Horde,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States and the state of Washington,
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States and state of Washington
and the ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens,
and the ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties of salary commission member
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties of salary commission member
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of our ability and understanding.
and to the best of our ability and understanding.
Great.
Okay.
Welcome, Katie.
Congratulations,
you.
Katie. Welcome to the Salary Commission.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Now that we've got Katie on board, we need to approve the minutes of the February 10, 2021 meeting of the Salary Commission. I've reviewed it. I presume all of us have. Is there any discussion? Any corrections, any modifications that you feel need to be made to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, we will need a motion and a second in order to approve those minutes as stated. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Ford. Anyone with a second?
I second that.
Thank you, Dixie. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion that we need to have before we vote? Hearing none, let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? I don't hear any. Any abstaining? I don't hear any. Great. Motion to approve has passed. All right, moving on to new business. We need to review the elected officials' current salaries. Now, as you know, on Salary Commission, we govern over the salaries of both the mayor and the city council. And now is where I need to make a statement so that I am fully transparent with everyone. I am currently running for city council, position number 1. If elected, whatever we decide as a salary commission will apply to me as a city council member. As such, I will fulfill my duty here on Salary Commission, and I will participate in conversations and discussions. However, when it comes time to vote, I feel that it is imperative that I have zero conflict of interest, and I don't even want to have the appearance of impropriety. And as such, when it comes time to vote, I am going to abstain from voting. So I just needed to make that clear and put that on the record from the beginning. Now, having said that, let's get to work. All right, so Anya, thank you. You have sent us information with regard to not only cost of living increases and current comparisons with regard to salaries for mayors and for city council with regard to similarly situated cities like Lake Stevens. I'm going to ask that you would jump in and direct us as to which direction you'd like us to go first.
So I'll just kind of recap the information that I've provided, and then I'll allow you guys to ask me any questions, of course, and then we can start discussion from there and kind of talk about next steps. So just as an overview, and I put a background in here for Katie's purposes to kind of show what we've done as for the Salary Commission's work in the last year or so with the mayor becoming full-time. So hopefully that was helpful. What I wanted to note was a lot of the discussion last year seemed to point in the direction that the commission was in favor of doing a COLA, maybe year by year, but we have to meet every year to discuss this. So I did include COLA information this time, which is the Consumer Price Index attachment number 2. The city uses the June to June number for the Seattle, Bellevue, Tacoma area. Currently, last night, the mayor presented his budget, preliminary budget, and the recommendation for the non-represented staff is 90% of that, which is pretty typical. It's kind of what the city has done over a period of time, the history of giving the cost of living increases. And so that would be 5.67%. Now, this is not set in stone. This is still going through council's review process and budgeting and all of that. That's just what's in the proposed budget currently. I will tell you that the collective bargaining agreement employees are governed by their agreement, which is a maximum of 3%. So potentially we'll have some non-represented staff be at 5.67 and our represented staff be at 3%. In the attachment number 1, I did list the same comparable cities that we looked at in January. Now, if you want, I can share my screen if that would be helpful, or if you have it printed, that's fine too. I'll just kind of synopsize what's on here.
Yeah, why don't we do both? You can share your screen and we'll follow along, assuming we have the printed materials in front of us. That'd be great.
Okay, just note that I won't be looking at the camera then. I'm going to look at my screen and try to toggle both because it's kind of hard.
Sure.
I have 2 screens. Okay.
Perfectly fine.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Great.
Yes, all the way over to where it says full-time, part-time. It does cut off the column for council monthly salary and the notes.
So I'll just try to scroll because it is a big piece of paper.
Okay.
So these are the cities that we looked at in January with the updated information. So I included those. These are comparables, and we updated the information based off of the OFM population estimates, assessed value, sales tax per capita. And there was some updated information available for monthly mayor salary and council salaries. I want to note that the biggest change that I saw this year was Arlington, which is the second line down over here. And I read their salary commission minutes, and they used to be on a different plan where they had a monthly meeting stipend, and they changed that and went to a monthly salary for their council and up to their salary for their mayor, as if their mayor were full-time. Their monthly salary for their mayor before was lower with a monthly meeting stipend. So they did change that this year. That was the biggest change. And they did make notes. Their commissions run a little differently. They meet every 3 years. And so they did set COLAs for the next 2 years. And they met in April this year. So that was the biggest change. Other than that, a lot didn't change. What we did was an average, a median, a low and a high for you, so you could quickly see and didn't have to do the math yourself on those. And below here in the green is the city of Lake Stevens and where we're at currently. This down here that's not labeled is how we get our comparators in the same columns as above. And this is what we use for all city staff. What we did in conjunction with these parameters is we took out all the part-time mayor cities. So that's why we're left with this many cities.
Right, since our mayor is now full-time, right. Okay, so I have a question. Hopefully it's not too silly. When you look at the column indicated as 2020 AV, that number represents the value of, fill in the blank for me, please.
Assessed value for the city limits.
All right, that's what I thought it was, assessed value of all the property within the city. Okay.
And this is 2020 information, and that's the most recent information. As you know, we've recently gone through an annexation, so those numbers are higher, I'm saying now, and we'll know that next year. But just keep that, just to keep that in mind.
Right. Okay. So it looks to me, and everybody please jump in. I'm just going to lead off, and then I'm really looking for your comments to participate in this conversation. It looks to me that where we landed last time with the mayor making $9,000 a year, it looks like it's definitely still within the range. Mm-hmm. We can talk about whether or not that needs adjustment as a base number, or if it needs adjustment simply by adding that cost of living percentage. So I would like to hear from you all as to which way you think we ought to discuss, or if you'd like to discuss both. Somebody jump in.
So just to clarify real quick, this is Ford Poston. So just to clarify, the discussion is basically, do we attach that number to an automatic CPI, COLA type of scenario where every year, whatever, it automatically adjusts, or and versus we meet periodically to discuss what the number should be set at, and we set it at that, based on our recommendation, correct?
Right, we can do either or both.
Well, I will just remind the commission that in our code, the commission is to meet yearly to discuss elected official salaries. So even if you would like to apply a COLA every year, and that's kind of the general consensus, you'll still be required to meet, confirm, hold a public hearing, and vote.
Okay.
Right.
And we're required to meet once a year, but we meet, I think it's more than that. I mean, it's probably works out to maybe at least 2-3 times a year typically.
I mean, it's required once, like a general time frame, and you might have multiple meetings in the same time frame, but it's required that you review the salaries once a year between a certain time frame.
Okay, all right. And so that being said, I mean, I'll just kind of kick this off, and I'm sure there might be some different opinions, but for what it's worth, I mean, just kind of a very general comment on COLAs and CPIs and that kind of stuff. For full-time permanent employees, I guess that totally makes sense. I think that's customary. I think it's appropriate. Plus, there's lots of employees. So I know that that's kind of the typical process for, you know, adjusting people's salaries on a periodic basis. That being said, for when it pertains to the mayor or the council people, and I would say probably specifically more towards the mayor, I personally, and this is my personal opinion, I'm more inclined to say I would rather have a discussion about increases or changes rather than making something automatic. And I think this goes back to, I think one of the things we talked about when we originally discussed changing the mayor's salary. I think one of the things I had mentioned or I brought up is I was saying, is there some way, because I think the question was, you know, what if the mayor isn't fulfilling his duties as a mayor and he's making this, you know, it was not that it's the high end of the salary range, but it was definitely, you know, it's a decent full-time, you know, compensation package. How do we make sure that they're living up to, you know, that role or that pay? And I think, in my opinion, I think one of the things that came up was just, hey, this is going to be reviewed periodically. So I think I'm more inclined to say, from my opinion, I like the idea of having a little bit more input on some of these things rather than making them permanent, especially for elected officials. I think is kind of my take. So I don't know if anybody has a differing opinion or whatever, but that's kind of my instinct when it comes to this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ford. Anybody else want to jump in and let us know how you're looking at it?
Yeah, this is Katie.
Oh, you went on mute, Katie.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Ford, thank you for your thoughts. And I'm kind of feeling the same way, being new. I'm just wondering, so we're paying per position here and not considering performance or previous experience or that? I mean, that's what we're kind of deciding, if it's going to be a straight up merit percentage increase or if there needs to be a discussion around it. Can you help me just determine what I'm giving opinion about?
Sure. This is Michelle. I'll jump in. So we were talking about when we met last year, we had set the mayor's salary. It went to council. They were not pleased. They sent it back to us. We reevaluated with new and different information, and we arrived at the current salary of $108,000 a year, plus the benefits as approved by city council. So the mayor has now been in office, and it is time for our annual review. And so part of what we have to look at is where does our mayor need to be in terms of compensation? And what I had brought up was a question of, do we want to go back and look at the base salary, or do we want to just talk about the cost of living increase that would apply to his existing salary? And when we left last time, and I believe Anya agrees with this in terms of memory and what had happened, is that we said we were leaning toward looking at the cost of living increase year over year. However, the code requires us to still meet and evaluate on an annual basis. Did that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Dixie, any comments, thoughts?
So, I mean, I remember our meeting back in January where we did have that discussion that you were just talking about. And I do agree with Ford. I do agree that I think that it shouldn't be something that we automatically just kind of roll over every year. I think that it should be based on the position itself. Have the responsibilities increased? Have the connections that he's making, have these things increased over the past year? If we don't think that that's happened this year, this could be a year where we just say we're going to go ahead and go with the cost of living, and then next year we can look at it again and say, yes, we've grown exponentially in this city. His responsibilities, the city council's responsibilities have increased. But I think that we need to look at both on a yearly basis. I don't think that it would be fair to not know all the information year after year, because we're changing so quickly. The city itself is changing so quickly. So I agree with Ford. I think we need to kind of talk about both, look at both. If we choose not to do both, then we don't, but it should be left open so that we have that opportunity to do year after year, instead of just saying, hi, it's really great to see you guys this one time, in the past 12 months. Okay, cost of living. Okay, see you later. See you next year. You know what I mean? So I just want to make sure that we're looking at all aspects of this position itself and what the responsibilities are.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Dixie. I appreciate your comments. So if I can go back, and Anya, please correct me if I got it wrong. I believe you said that non-represented staff usually get 90% of what I believe is 6.3%, which would be 5.67%. Is that correct? You're muted.
All right, thank you. Yes, that's correct. And like I said too, this is just the proposed budget at this point. And it's going through all of the budget process currently.
Okay, so I did some quick math on my calculator. And if we applied the 5.67% to the mayor's salary, it would go from $9,000 to $9,510.30 per month, just on a monthly basis. So that's one calculation. Then you also, I believe, indicated that the represented employees per the contract are at 3%. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to write this number down.
I will add that we have a third contract that's under negotiation currently. So and that's for our non-guild, non-commission. So that one's unsettled yet. Okay.
So let me do another quick math. So if we take 9,000 and we multiply it by 1.03, then that number becomes $9,270 per month if we go with the cost of living adjustment under either of those two calculations. Any discussion about what you think is most appropriate?
So 3 or 5.67, basically.
Yes.
I would. This may sound weird, and not to kind of wander away from answering the question, but I think in a weird way, part of doing this manual calculation, or at least having the discussion about these kinds of things, than just deferring it to inflation. I think it's a good idea to do that. One of the reasons being that I think we're in a situation right now. Anya, I looked at the CPI data you included, and I think, not to talk about CPI too much, but one of the things that these CPI calculations typically do is exclude things like energy and other, major components of our lives. And so that being said, if you actually included those things, the CPI would actually be much higher than what they're quoting. And so my point being is that I think we're likely in a situation where we're seeing inflation much higher than it's been in the past typically, and probably will continue to persist for a long time. So I think one of the things so to answer your question, I would say using the higher number, I think, is appropriate, and it still leaves it in the median number. So I feel comfortable with that. But number two, I think one of the important things for having this conversation periodically is that we will likely probably see situations in the future where CPI doesn't probably really capture the real changes that are occurring. So it gives us the ability to maybe make those kinds of adjustments or decisions as we review these things. So anyway, that being said, I kind of lean probably more towards the 5.67 than the 3, just because of one, I think inflation is much higher than what that number represents in reality. And 2, it still puts him very much in that median range, which I think is part of I think when we talked about salary in the first place, we were kind of shooting somewhere in that middle range. And I think it puts it still in that range, basically. So.
Okay, thank you, Ford, for the comments. Katie, any comment on that?
I'm agreeing with a lot of what Ford is saying. So I'll just echo his comments and
Okay,
that's all.
okay. Miss Dixie, how about you? Your thoughts?
So not to sound like a broken record, but I do agree with Ford as well. I think that the 5.67% increase does put him in the median range, which is kind of where we wanted it to be. We've all seen the growth of the community and the city. And I agree with Ford regarding the inflation. I think it's, I don't think that the spreadsheet that we got clearly reflects the inflation and the cost of living that is happening around us. I don't think that it reflects it. I do agree with the 5.67% increase.
Okay, all right, great. It sounds like there is consensus. I know this is our first time talking through these issues, and we've got a member that's missing, and I'm sure she'll have some input at the next meeting as well. But do we feel pretty comfortable that we've now talked through where we think we want to go with regard to the mayor's salary?
I think, yes, I'm comfortable with that. Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
Katie, Ford, you're comfortable? Do you think we need any further discussion with regard to the mayor's salary?
Nope, I'm comfortable as well.
I'm
Okay.
comfortable.
Great. Okay, so let us turn the corner then and let us talk about city council and where they are currently and where they might possibly be. Now, forgive me, I'm checking my notes here so that I can quote correctly. Maybe I'll ask for some assistance. Anya, can you please provide us with the current pay schedule for council? Oh, it's right here in front of me, silly me. Sorry about that.
And you'll note they still are on the monthly per meeting stipend. So they get a base monthly salary of $564 with $80 per meeting with a max of 4 meetings per month.
So Anya, how was that? I can't remember last year when we had this discussion. How is it that they submit that they attended a meeting?
I'm not involved in that process, but I believe they have to fill out a sheet saying what meeting and that it occurred, that what meeting they attended, and they submit it to payroll. But I can confirm and get you some data if that's something that the commission wishes to see.
I'm interested in finding that out.
Last time I was aware, I'll chime in. Last time I was aware, they had a worksheet that they complete, and it was exactly as Anya said. You fill out your date, what you attended, where it was, and that counts toward however many meetings up to the 4 that they get paid for each month. So under the current scheme, they've got $564 as a base, with $80 per meeting up to a maximum of 4, which would be another $320, which makes their total available maximum per month to be $884. Now, when I say maximum per month, I believe they might also be able to claim mileage, but I am not positive about that. So discussions about where you think we ought to take this in terms of, do we adjust the base with cost of living? Do we start over and just look at comparables and then compare and contrast? What are your thoughts about how you'd like to delve into the analysis for city council salary.
Maybe I'll kick things off again. This may sound like a weird question, but I mean, what's the purpose of this compensation, right? I mean, I get that the mayor is a full-time employee, the other employees are full-time employees. What's the purpose of the $564? Is this just, hey, we're compensating you for your time? You know, obviously this is not a full-time position, whatever. Is it an enticement for someone to want to be on the council? Is it designed to compensate them for their time? I mean, how do you typically look at this?
Anya, do you have the official answer to that?
Yeah. How is it described?
I don't. I mean, it's based off the salary commission determines whether there's a salary or not and what it is. I haven't been at the city very long, a year and a half, so I don't know the history of how that was set. However, I do agree with your comments about enticing people to run. It's a big commitment to be a council member. Just from what I have seen, they're attending weekly city council meetings and workshops that are at least usually 2 hours apiece each week. They're also meeting with citizens on their own time, responding to correspondence, attending and traveling on behalf of the city and looking and talking to our legislators and going down to Olympia or even Washington DC, advocate for the city. And then they also are a part of special meetings and they're assigned to other boards and commissions. All of our council members serve on, usually, I know there's a couple that are on Veterans Board, there's all sorts of county boards. They have a list of boards that they're assigned to, and those are, I'm not sure how frequently each of those boards meet, but I do hear a lot of, oh, there's a Veterans Commission meeting coming up. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is they work a lot for the city on their own time. And I think that's probably the reason for compensation. A lot of them have other jobs and family, and it's a meaningful thing. And Michelle, feel free, you've got more history than I do.
Well, I think you are absolutely correct in your summary. And honest and truly, for even if they maxed out at $884 a month, it's still called public service for a reason, because I think if you multiplied that by the hours of input per month, it would come out to very little.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of time commitment here. So I think adding on to what Anya said, I think it's just a way to acknowledge the service. It is public service. It's not expected to be a full-time job. If it ever did become a full-time job, you know, then we'd have to have a completely different kind of conversation. But I do know that every council member has a quote unquote real job.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
I will just add, on top of the actual meetings is the preparation. And just for example, last night they received like a 200-page budget document they had to read through and be able to be prepared to ask questions and process. And so it's not only a time commitment for the meeting, they also have to make time to prepare and read all the materials, which is quite extensive sometimes.
And if I'm reading this correctly, we're well below the low on the range you provided, correct?
Yes, when we look at cities with full-time mayor, cities our size, using those comparable indicators, yes.
Okay.
That's what I see.
However, if I can jump in and make comment, last time we looked at this, we were not well below the low because these numbers have changed.
Okay.
So we may want to start from scratch. I'm very open to what the commission members want to do on this. But yes, fair comment about where we are currently in comparison. But last time we met and decided on this plan, it was not out of the ordinary.
Okay. Well,
So, yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, just so as a follow-up to this, I mean, I appreciate that definitely clarifies kind of understanding a little bit more about the pay, about the position, about the time required. And I would say, so my impression is based on the input I've gotten is that, you know, it sounds like you're probably never going to, like you said, this is public service. So you're probably not going to be properly, I feel like the mayor was a little bit more about having a professional mayor, having compensation that matches that skill set. With the council members, you're probably not going to be fully compensated for everything you do, for the time you put in. There definitely is some public service that's required here, and that makes sense. The only thing I would add to that is that if they are doing all this, you know, work, all this traveling, all this other stuff, I think the perfect sweet spot would be where maybe that compensation reflects some of that, meaning that they're not losing money traveling around or doing things or spending time at a workshop or whatever, that, you know, they're not necessarily, this isn't a great lucrative career, but at the same time, they're not losing a whole lot to participate in it, at least the cost of doing the day-to-day things. So, I mean, my first impression I throw out there is we're well below the low. And like you said, Michelle, that this has changed recently, and that makes sense too. So maybe, you know, I would be comfortable saying that number should probably be a little bit more reflective of that range. It looks like we're well below that. So I'm open, you know, if anybody has any other input about where that should lie in that range. But I think there's probably a better meeting between what these people, you know, what they're expending to do their job, and maybe it won't be 100% reimbursement, but we get a little bit closer that they're not moving too far backwards to do a good job.
No, I agree. I look at these numbers and I'm kind of a little bit shocked, I guess compared to last year's numbers, they didn't seem so vastly different. And I know a lot of it has to do with growth and just everything else. I mean, looking at this, I'm wondering about taking their current salary and just rolling those 4 meetings into that current salary, so that it isn't something where they're having, like you said, Anya, you know, they have to submit paper, they have to do this, they have to do that. And it's like, okay, well, if we went ahead and incorporated those 4 meetings into the salary, that's less time that they're having to spend, less paperwork they're having to turn in, things like that, more time they can give back to the community. But I do think that even if we roll that into it, we're looking at 884. I mean, and I think that we add a small cost of living on top of that, you know, to cover the mileage, to cover the different meetings, to cover, you know, those type of things. They do give a lot. You know, I'm out in the community a lot, and I do see a lot of our council members out there giving a lot of their time cleaning up paint, cleaning up, you know, different things, picking up garbage on their own time, as well as attending a lot of the meetings that I deal with my organization outside of work. So, I mean, my recommendation, what I think would personally that would be appropriate, is if we took those 4 meetings and we rolled it into their current salary, which would bring it to the 884. And then we look at the cost of living increase. Whether we go with, you know, the 1%, or I'm sorry, Anya, I can't remember what you said that the other percentage was for non, can you help me here?
3%. 3%.
Yeah. So it was what was it?
3%.
3%. So whether we take the 884 and we say, okay, we're just going to go ahead and keep it here, or we go the 884 plus the cost of living increase of 3%. I mean, I think based on the numbers that we're seeing and the other council members of the other cities that are close to us and similar to us, and then how our city is growing exponentially, and the more work that needs to be done, I think that that's something we should really think about, is to have that increase so that we say, we value you, we value your service, you know, and we show that.
I would like to just add really quick about the difference in numbers from last year, is because last year when we first met, we looked at a larger list of cities, including part-time, when we looked at city council. And when we dwindled it down to just looking at cities with full-time mayors, with our other comparator factors, this is what we're coming up with. And so that's why there's such a big difference in the averages and stuff. We had a little more cities, which included part-time.
Right, right. Very true. Katie, any thoughts?
Yes, I agree that we should roll in the stipend for the meetings into the base salary. It makes no sense to have people submitting paperwork and clogging up payroll when we know they're out there meeting with folks in the community. That gets us to that 884. I'm looking at this. I don't even think a 3% really covers where I think as a city we want to be. I mean, these folks are out there doing community work, figuring out what's on the hearts of our community. And, you know, if we did a 3% on top of that 884, that still puts us very low, not even close to that median. So I would suggest we look a little bit higher, maybe towards the 1,000 range. And I just think we get rid of that per meeting stipend. I absolutely agree that it should be rolled into the base.
Okay, thank you, Katie. I appreciate your comments. So I did some quick math just while we were all talking. And if we start at the 884 and we roll in a 3% cost of living, we come out with $910.52 a month. If we start at 884 and we roll in the 5.67%, we're at $934.12, which is a increase of approximately just shy of $24 a month. So that to Katie's statement, and actually to Dixie's and Ford's as well, that does put us solidly on the low, still a bit below the median, and of course that means below the average as well. So good analysis, good thinking. I guess all we can do is have further discussion. Anya, is there any new, different, or more information that we need to have further or different discussion?
So what I heard from Dixie is that she'd like to know more about their meetings, and I can get that if that's still the wish of the commission, and I can gather maybe how many meetings they're attending, if that's something you guys want. And then I also heard the question about mileage, which I believe they do get, but I can confirm. So if there's any other questions about what they currently get, I can find that out and bring it back next meeting. I will just kind of add that these are considered W-2 employees for the purposes of taxes, like what we pay into for Washington paid family medical leave. So they still have to pay that out of their out of this salary as well. So I'd like to just keep that in mind.
Did they get any public benefits as well?
No.
Okay, just W-2, like typical payroll taxes come out. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just taking a quick note here too, because I want to make sure I capture that for further conversation. Okay, so all right, let me take a look here at where we're at. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to talk about, think about with regard to city council salary at this time? Or do you think we've gone about as far as we can go for our first information conversation about this?
I think I'd like to know kind of on just an average of an average city council person, what the average number of meetings is that they're attending. Probably on a monthly basis, if not a yearly basis, if not annual, that's fine. And roughly, I don't know if you can find out this on your or not, but roughly what's the general mileage consensus that usually is submitted on a monthly basis by an average city council person.
Okay.
Yeah, and it could be, I don't know, actually, I have no knowledge as to how many council members even submit mileage. So
Mhm.
that might be interesting to know too.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, good job, everyone. This is a big subject to tackle. In closing, I'm only going to say this because I guess I'm going to play the role of Debbie Downer here just for a moment. And just remind all of us that, yes, we want to do what is right for those who serve us. I just also want to let everybody know that our expenses for the city are exceeding our revenues. And that was brought to the attention by the finance director as just, a statement of what is going on. And so I would just say we need to be very thoughtful in how we move forward, understanding that we want to do the right thing, of course, but be careful because of the constraints of our city budget. That's all.
Two follow-up questions that, if you don't mind, I was going to ask how much is spending outstripping receipts? I mean, what's the trajectory right now?
Well, if we, and this goes back to last night's meeting, and I believe you can get most of those materials online if you want to take a look for yourself. But if we go on the trajectory of spending based on what's currently in or allowable in the budget, and I know that the mayor has already done some work on that and had to pare back some things because the overall ask by all of the departments in the city totaled about 1.7 million. And, obviously we can't give everything that everybody wants. So he has pared back, and based on the trajectory of current revenues and expenditures, we dip below that 10% required reserve between 2026 and 2027. So it's a little bit away, but it's like 10 minutes from now, unless we're continuing to be vigilant.
Did that factor in the revenue from the sales tax coming in from Costco? Because I know last time we looked at that, it did not. Did this factor that in?
Right. I believe that starting fourth quarter of next year, there was some consideration for the sales tax revenue that Costco will generate. Because as we all know, that Costco is supposed to be opening approximately a year from now. So at some point in the fourth quarter, we should see some sales tax revenues.
Okay.
I will add too, if you want more information on budget and financial information, we do have a transparency center on our city website. It's called ClearGov, and you can access it. Any citizen can and look at financials.
Okay, Miss Anya, is there anything more that we need to cover that's not on our agenda? I think we've gone through our agenda items.
The only thing I would like to do while everybody's here is schedule the next meeting.
Great idea.
Because it's just easier.
Yep.
So if you could get out your calendars, does this time frame work better? I know we've tried earlier times, 4:30, 5. This was our latest meeting we've done. But as far as timing goes, does it depend on the day, or does this time work best?
This time works for me. Earlier would not.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, evenings are pretty much, if with enough notice, shouldn't be a problem.
As long as it's not Friday night lights. Friday.
Right.
Sorry. I have a senior on the drum line. I have to, I have to be there. So
Absolutely you do.
Do we want to try for next week sometime? Or is that too soon? Hopefully, I know we don't have Caroline on here, but hopefully she'll be available to come.
Are you thinking next week, Wednesday, the 27th?
Yep, that works for me.
Or are we Or do we need to go out 2 weeks to November 3rd?
The 27th works for me.
Yeah, either one of those will work for me.
Okay.
Does that give you enough time, Anya, to pull the information?
That's a great question. I think it should be. But maybe we pencil the 27th and then the following Wednesday, right? You said the following Wednesday too was the 3rd?
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, I may have a conflict on the 3rd.
Okay, what about? Oh yeah, well, that's a bad week for anybody that's running for city council, I suppose.
Yeah,
I mean, we could do
but
Monday.
that's not why.
Well, we could do Monday the 1st as a
No,
secondary.
we can't, because that's, council is moving their meeting to Monday and rescheduling Veterans Commission.
Okay, you're right. Thank you. It's not on my calendar yet.
That's okay. If we wanted to move day of the week to that week, how does Thursday night look for everybody, the 4th of November?
That's my daughter's 18th birthday. Sorry.
Oh, that would be a hard no. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so I'm hearing if the 27th doesn't work, then we're gonna go to the second week of November.
Okay.
I'm available any of those days.
I am only available the 8th and the 9th of that week, not the end of the week.
Okay.
Does the 8th
Um,
work then? Because we have council on Tuesday nights.
Right.
Does the 8th
Works
work
for
at
me.
6 o'clock?
Fine by me.
Yep.
Works
That
for
might,
me.
Works for
I
me.
guess there's no rush to meet next week. We have some time. We like to do the public hearing and vote on whatever your next steps are right around the first couple days of December. So it's effective because the salaries are effective 30 days after. So this
So
does
why
give us a little time, but I can double check with Carolyn and make sure these dates work, and I'll send out a notice. Caitlin or I will send out something.
Okay,
Yes.
so do we only have November 8th on the calendar, or do we have a second date as well?
I think we had next week, but should we just go ahead and keep the 8th?
We
It
can.
would, yeah, it would be less work for you having to schedule a bunch of stuff and calling around and trying to get everything so quickly. I mean,
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just confirm with Carolyn then that the 8th
Okay.
works for her, because I think we'd want to hear her side.
Yeah.
And if there's an issue with the 8th, we can email you guys or contact you.
Okay,
Okay?
all right, so the only
Sounds good.
date we are calendaring at this point is Monday, November 8th at 6 p.m., correct?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Now let me ask the question again. Is there anything else we need to cover before we consider adjourning? Anya?
do not believe so.
Not for me.
No, Miss Deputy Clerk, anything we need to cover on your end? Okay, wonderful. Then I believe we have gotten through our agenda. Thank you all for your input and your thoughts. We will pick this up again. And at this point, if there is nothing further, somebody, if you would please make a motion to adjourn and another person to second.
You're on mute for,
I motion to adjourn. I got caught.
And is there a second?
I second.
Great. All right, we've got a motion to adjourn and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion has passed. Thank you all so very much. I appreciate your talents and your skills that you contribute to this commission. You make it important and very enjoyable. So with that, let's sign off. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good to
bye.
see you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Anya, before you go, I have a question for you really quick.
Sure. I'm going to stop the recording.